Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and this episode is produced for GoodCrowd.info. Our guest today is Michael Gale of GlobalGiving. GlobalGiving is one of perhaps the very oldest crowdfunding site on the internet. Launched in about 2002, GlobalGiving brings more expertise, more experience to the table than perhaps any other website. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It is exciting to talk to the grand old leaders in crowdfunding. And so, Michael, you've undertaken an effort, and of course you haven't been there the whole 10 years, but you've undertaken an effort to gather the wisdom of the organization and put it down into one single place. Tell us about your effort.
Sure. So we realized we had not just 10 years of data and stories about how to crowdfund well, but we had a lot of little pieces of information and little tidbits of tools and resources kind of scattered throughout our website and in different presentations. And we decided it was high time for us to compile all those together into one easy-to-read guide, so someone that's new to crowdfunding can pick it up and 10 or 15 minutes later have a good sense of how to get started.
That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about the lessons. Can you maybe walk us through the highlights of the tips so that here in the next 10 minutes or so we can figure out how to run a crowdfunding campaign?
Sure. So we distilled it into 11 tips, but there are a few that I always try and focus on. One of the key things is working with people on how to develop their project page, for example. Every crowdfunding platform has the point in the process where you actually put words on paper, words on the screen about what you're raising money for. Through analyzing our data, we know that an average donor spends 4.2 seconds reviewing a project page before they decide whether to donate or whether to move on and look at a different project. So knowing...
I just want to highlight, that's not very long.
It is not very long. It is not very long. So we tell people their job is to convince someone in 4.2 seconds to at least spend an extra few seconds on their page and consider donating. If not, go ahead and make that donation after those 4.2 seconds. So it's everything from making sure you have good, high-quality photos. The brain processes photos 60,000 times faster than words, so it's a great way to maximize those 4.5 seconds. Put the most important information up front. Don't wait till the third paragraph to mention the name of your organization. Whenever you can, use bullets or flowcharts or things that make it easy for skimming eyes to get the sense of your campaign. And then using video is a great way to get people to hang out on your page a little bit longer rather than just flipping on to the next project.
It would seem to me one of the first things people look at when they arrive on a page is how much money you've already raised, and that is a huge factor. How do you analyze that? That
is a key point. So one of our tips, it's actually called Start Strong. So we talk about the 30% rule. You need to get basically 30% of your funding goal. You should know where it's coming from before your campaign even starts. So these should be your friends, your family, your colleagues, your close personal network, ready to get on and give those first $10, $25 donations really on the first hour of your campaign. At GlobalGiving, we do have not just compared to some of the other sites where really you are solely responsible for funding your project, you and your network. We do have a community of GlobalGiving donors, whether they're individuals or corporations, who are coming on and looking for projects to donate to without any particular affinity before they get on the site. So there is an opportunity to capture that kind of ambient donor traffic. But we know donors would much rather be the 37th or the 138th donor rather than the first, second, or third donor. You want to feel like if you don't know the person, you don't know the project, that they already have the backing of their community. So that's why it's so key. If you're going to have a chance at getting those donors to donate to your project, you've got to get part of the way with the people who know and trust you. It comes down to, how do you access that magical crowd in crowdfunding? And it is possible, it is out there, but you have to start with your own network.
Great insight. So certainly we've talked about how to tell a story on the page, 4.2 seconds, start strong. What are some of the other tips that you've developed after 10 years of doing this?
We talk a lot about the importance of email. Email is sometimes a really overlooked tool. It's so simple, but crowdfunding, I think, gets a reputation of being all about social media and focusing on getting the word out there, sharing your videos and photos and your campaign on Twitter and Facebook. We talk about social media also and how to maximize that as a resource, but email is so key. We know from analyzing 10 plus years of donation traffic and where the donors come from, overwhelmingly the main source is email. So we go into things like making sure you don't send just one mass email to your whole list. That's kind of the first step. Don't throw everybody into a BCC. Certainly don't throw everybody into a CC or put them in the 2-line. But write individual emails, and if your list is so big, which we hope it becomes, that you can't spend 3 weeks writing 100 individual emails, use a program like MailChimp or SendGrid or Google Mail Merge or something similar. Actually, at least get everyone's name in there, and if you can, a little bit of a customized, greeting. People give because they're asked to give, not because they see your project float past their newsfeed. And the fastest, most efficient way to ask someone is over email. Email also has the advantage of being able to be really lending itself really well to experimentation and learning. So using mail programs where you can test different subject lines, different photos, different asks, different colors of donate buttons, you can really get creative with it, and you can learn very fast and very efficiently what works well in your email communication.
That's great, Michael. So what else? Email is key. Boy, I think that's a great insight, because so many people do think of crowdfunding as a social media event, and they focus on Facebook. Email's great. What else?
So actually, one of our very first tip in the guide is planning a SMART campaign. So we talk a lot about SMART goals and other aspects of our work. Make sure I get this acronym right. Specific, measurable, actionable. What's the R? Hold on, I gotta pull up our guide. I have my cheat sheet here. Yeah, you want it to be specific, measurable, attainable. That's an important one. Relevant and time bound. So I think sometimes with crowdfunding, people will just throw up a project, a random amount of money goal they want to raise, and just hope for the best. But really, crowdfunding, like anything else you do where you want to see results, you got to put together specific goals that you're trying to achieve, and that's really where the power of crowdfunding comes in, and what makes crowdfunding different than just putting a PayPal button on your website. People really respond well in crowdfunding to having a specific goal. So you want to raise $5,000 to complete this particular specific project that donors will see results for. Individual donors are looking for something very tangible they can contribute their money to. So specific is important, measurable, the amount of money is important, attainable, that your first crowdfunding campaign, you're not going to set out to raise $1 million. Start small, try and raise $1,000, $5,000, even a couple $100 for your first campaign to test it out. You want it to be relevant, so you want to make sure you're crowdfunding for something that is relevant to your mission and your organization, and something that's relevant to the donors that you're reaching out to. And then maybe the most key one of these SMART aspects is time bound. If you email someone and say, I work for this great organization, why don't you come to my website and make a donation? They may or they may not. But if you write them and say, I have 3 days to raise this amount of money, and I need you to go right now to make a donation, it's a lot more of a convincing call to action. And that probably is the most important thing about crowdfunding, is that it be a time-bound a campaign.
Yeah, that is the magic of crowdfunding, right? To create that deadline, to create urgency, that call to action, the immediacy. Excellent point. I think we've got time for 2 more tips. So help us prioritize among your 11. What else do we need to know in our short time that we have left?
Sure. So I'd like to talk a little bit about thanking donors and how specifically your donor retention or gratitude strategy should change when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign. Anyone who's done development work, fundraising work, knows you have to thank your donors, that donors expect it, and also it makes them more likely to give again. Global Giving has actually found you need, in a crowdfunding campaign where people are used doing things online and having immediate results or immediate kind of gratification from the actions they've taken. With Amazon Prime, you expect your iPhone to come the next day. We really found that 48 hours is the key time frame for thanking a donor. Even if it's just a quick, templated thank you with a couple new sentences in thanking this particular donor, get it out as quick as possible. Gone are the days where you send a thank you note a month later or at the end of the year for the donation. You need to thank them right away. Donors expect it. But it serves a couple purposes. Like I said, crowdfunding campaign is time bound, so you want to thank them quickly because you want to keep them engaged in your campaign. We found that donors that are thanked within the first 48 hours are much more likely to donate again to a campaign. So you got that going for you. If you thank them and they feel appreciated, they might actually get on and donate again. But it's also an opportunity to engage that donor as an advocate. This is where the real power of crowdfunding can come in, where you don't want to attract donors to your campaign. You want to attract donors who then become advocates for you, who become fundraisers for your campaign themselves. So sending a thank you is another opportunity that the donor appreciates, but it's also an opportunity for you to re-engage them and say, thank you for your support. This is how much more we have to raise in our campaign. We have 2 more days. Would you please share a tweet, put out a Facebook message? Could you email 3 friends and try and share the message about our campaign? So there's a lot that goes into that thanking of a donor during a crowdfunding campaign, but the key takeaway is do it quickly, 48 hours or as soon as possible.
That's great insight. Great insight. Okay, last tip.
Oh goodness, let's see. I want to go back to actually the second tip in our guide. It's called getting your story straight. This is an important one for organizations of all shapes and sizes, particularly organizations that maybe are new to individual fundraising at the smaller donation level. Maybe they're used to having relationships with larger donors, or they're more used to writing grant proposals for foundations or corporations. Whereas if you're writing a proposal for a foundation, and I come from the foundation world, that's my background, you want to talk about your outcomes and your outputs and your impact, and you want to have your log frame spelled out. You want to talk about what's this going to do 5 years from now. It's really about the budgets and your overhead ratios. An individual who's getting on to give $10 or $25 does not care about any of that. Obviously, they're making a decision in 5 seconds whether to donate or not. They don't have time to read your 10-year strategic plan before they decide whether they're going to give $25 or $50. Even the donors on our platform who are giving larger amounts, who are giving $100, $200, or $1,000, they're not going to read your 10-year strategic plan either. This crowdfunding donors are coming from a point of passion and a point of personal investment or interest in you, your project, your program. So crowdfunding really, in a nutshell, comes all down to storytelling. Telling a good story that engages an individual donor at a personal and emotional level. So our guide, first of all, highlights that importance. Make it about an individual. And then tailor your communications, so your email, your Facebook posts, and your project page itself to cater to that storytelling mindset. So we talk about different types of stories you could tell. You can tell the story of the issue you're addressing and how it affects one person. You can tell a story about the place where you're working and someone from that place who's involved with your program or affected by your program. You can talk about the people, what makes this community unique, what makes the people of this community particularly relevant for the work that you're doing. Maybe you have an innovative idea or an innovative methodology you're using, and you can talk about how that methodology, again, has affected one person or is being implemented by one person. And then you can talk about, as the fundraiser or as the leader of your project, your own personal motivation for fundraising. That's sometimes maybe the most powerful story, is saying why you care about it, why it matters to you. It lets people identify with you on a personal level and feel like they're connected and committed to the same cause that you are.
Well, I think those are great insights, and the way that people connect to an individual as a representation of a cause is really, I think, an important insight and a great message to end on. Let's just cover a couple of things. How do people who may want to crowdfund on Global Giving, how do they go about doing that? What's the process?
Sure. So Global Giving, we're open to anyone in the world who's working or associated with a nonprofit, no matter where that nonprofit or charitable organization is registered. About half the organizations on our platform are U.S. 501c3 nonprofits. The other half, and actually I think it's a little bit more than half now, are registered in 160 other countries. We can work with you if you're working anywhere in the world. You can apply at any time on our website, globalgiving.org. Click on the Nonprofits tab and you'll find our application. Global Giving believes that the power of great ideas can come from anyone, anywhere, at any time. One of our organizational values is always open. So if you have a great idea that you think crowdfunding is a way to help you achieve your goals, we'd love to talk to you. We have at least 4 times a year campaigns for new organizations to try out our platform. There's no cost to apply, no cost to post a project. So it really is open, and we encourage everyone who's interested to check us out.
Fantastic. Well, again, Michael, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and I want to wish you every success in the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much, Devin. I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
All righty. Let's do some good.